Whether you have a weak immune system or you're just looking to kick your average one into high gear, this show is for you. Hi, I'm the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the Exam Room Live. We appreciate you helping to make the world a healthier place. Are you the kind of person that just seems to get cold after cold, and more often than not, that cold turns into a raging sinus infection? Or maybe when everyone else in your house is running around just as healthy as they possibly could be, are you the one who is sick in bed? Well, that's just not fair. Could that be your body's way of saying, hey, your immune system needs a boost? Better yet, could your diet give it that boost? That's what we're going to find out today with Dr. Neal Barnard. He is the author of Your Body in Balance. And we're going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag as well. So if there's something that you would like to ask Dr. Barnard, go ahead, post that in the comments or in the chat. And we're going to get to as many questions as we possibly can here on the show today. And with that, we do welcome Dr. Barnard to the Exam Room Live. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Chuck.
So, when we're talking about the immune system and somebody's diet, obviously a lot goes into how well somebody's immune system is functioning. But in terms of their diet, how big of a role does that play in this?
Big role. The immune system is really your white blood cells. They're coursing around through your bloodstream. They're looking for viruses. They're looking for bacteria, anybody who doesn't belong there. And like anybody, they don't do very well in an oil slick. So let's say you're eating a lot of greasy foods and the white blood cells are trying to make antibodies. They're trying to move around. And the more grease there is in your diet, the more grease there ends up in your blood. And it just interferes with the white blood cells. Kind of simple as that. So researchers have looked at this in a couple different ways. One is they'll take blood samples. They'll put them in a lab dish and they'll add fat to them. And they find that the more fat they add, the worse the white blood cells work. Then they'll take volunteers and they'll start an IV and they'll put fatty infusions into their blood. Same story. And then they'll finally just say, okay, you're not in a petri dish and you don't need an IV. What if you're just at McDonald's or somewhere and you're eating fatty foods? And so in testing the foods themselves, yes, fatty foods impair immune function. So the very same diet you wanted to follow, a really healthy, low-fat, plant-based diet, it's good for so many other things, but it's also good for your immune system.
So let's get to some specifics here. Sienna is wondering, what are the best foods to actually boost that immune system?
A couple of things. Well, we've talked about avoiding fats. Avoiding dairy is an important thing too. If you're talking about a respiratory illness, colds and that sort of thing, dairy products often leave people with sort of, the scientific term is grunge. Just kidding. We're talking about phlegm in your respiratory tree. And many people will see this after a dairy-rich meal. They'll even cough a little bit. So getting away from dairy is a good idea. And then what things to add or emphasize. You know the vitamin C story. Linus Pauling, who won 2 Nobel Prizes, was a big proponent of vitamin C. And since his demise, the research has been a little mixed. But I have to say, I think the best evidence suggests that people who get more vitamin C do better. And where this really came out strongly is in athletes, where athletes who have more vitamin C in their diets, they tend to do better. Now, I should raise a couple of points. Meat doesn't have vitamin C at all. Meat eaters get 0 vitamin C from what the meat that they're eating. Plants have some vitamin C, and not just citrus fruits that kind of made it famous, but even broccoli and green vegetables have some vitamin C. So that's all good. And Linus Pauling said, yeah, sure, do that, but take pills too. So some people will have a gram of vitamin C per day and up to more heroic doses. Nobody really knows the right amount, but having some vitamin C is probably a good idea. A couple of other things. Vitamin D comes from the sun, good for absorbing calcium, probably reduces the risk of respiratory infections a little bit as well. And the one that's kind of on everybody's mind these days is garlic. And I have to say there was a really good study that a lot of us were looking at just when COVID was arriving in 2020, that researchers looked at garlic supplements and they just tracked people's infections, not necessarily coronavirus, but just getting colds. And there was actually quite a profound effect that the number of sick days people took was way down in the garlic group. With all of these studies, you've got to be, I think, a little skeptical because people want good news about things they want to eat anyway, like garlic. And also the manufacturers, sometimes I think they tweak the results a little, or they tend to not want to publish negative results, I guess is what I'm saying. Nonetheless, I've been impressed by the quality of these research studies, and I think there's something to it.
I'm curious, you mentioned broccoli among those foods there. People a lot of times overlook that as being the vitamin C powerhouse that it is. But do you think that the vitamin C that's in there is also working in conjunction with all of the other vitamins and nutrients that come with the broccoli to really help get that immune system kicked into high gear?
Oh, what a good point, Chuck. Yes, you're absolutely right. Broccoli has vitamin C. It's got also some beta carotene, which you wouldn't think of because it's not orange until it's sat on your kitchen counter for like 6 weeks while you were away on vacation. But there is some vitamin C. There's some beta carotene in there too. And there's one other thing. This will not be on the test. All the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, kale, collards, cauliflower, have a special ingredient called sulforaphane. And sulforaphane has a different action that's very cool. Your liver is all the time trying to get rid of impurities. That's your liver's job. It's a filter. And the sulforaphane allows the enzymes in the liver, which are called phase 2 enzymes, to work faster and more effectively to get rid of toxins. What that means is that if you have these vegetables every day, they're giving you a lot of the good stuff, beta carotene, vitamin C, others, but they're also helping you to clean the bad stuff out of your body by heightening the liver's ability to filter them out.
So Renee emailed a question in. It was kind of a two-parter. She was one asking about vitamin C and if you have mega doses of that, if that could help you get over a cold faster, which we've already addressed. But she was also then wondering about these little over-the-counter supplements like Emergent C that have those high doses. Is that something that people should be turning toward, or should they be going for the oranges, the citrus fruits, or the broccoli, as we've discussed?
Well, the foods are the place to start. For sure, because they have not only the vitamin C that you do need and in significant quantities, but they have everything else that you need. And the produce also doesn't have what you don't need. It doesn't have the fat that's going to clog up your bloodstream and make your white blood cells malfunction. However, Linus Pauling said, if you really want to be protected against colds, he thought you couldn't get enough, even if you're eating lots of fruits and vegetables. So at the time that he died, he was taking a huge amount. He was taking about 18 grams of vitamin C per day, and you would never get there with foods. And in fact, a lot of people were afraid he was going to be giving himself kidney stones from all the vitamin C that he was taking. He did okay. But the bottom line is, yes, start with foods, and then you can supplement in addition to the foods if you want, but not instead of.
So Shannon brings up an interesting point. We know that those comfort foods, those high-fat foods that you were talking about, they work to suppress the immune system. But isn't it kind of a vicious cycle? Because a lot of times when we don't feel good, we turn to those comfort foods in hopes of feeling a little bit better. But based off of what it is that you're saying, if you go to Dairy Queen and you get that big blizzard when you're feeling kind of rotten, wouldn't that actually then perpetuate the cycle of rotten that you're in at the moment?
You said it, Chuck. Two issues. One is you're eating fatty stuff, whether it's dairy fat, meat fat, fry or grease, and the fat interferes with your immune system. You will eventually recover, presumably, but why slow it down by impairing your immune system? Second thing, as I mentioned earlier, not only do those foods have the fat that's going to interfere, they don't have what you need. So when you're feeling crummy and you have a burger instead of the plant foods, as I mentioned, there is zero vitamin C in meats, and if that's where your calories are coming from, you're filling up without giving your body what it needs.
You know, some of the exam roomies in the chat room right now, they're like, yeah, but exercise too. Exercise, keep the body moving. That also helps to strengthen the immune system. There's a connection there as well, isn't there?
Well, yes, but exercise is a double-edged sword. When we look at runners, distance runners, in some cases, they're having more colds than other people. And you think, how can that be? You're in such good shape. Well, what the shape that they're in is good cardiovascular shape, meaning their heart is strong and their blood vessels are responsive. But in some cases, they don't take particularly good care of themselves. There are some distance runners who are frankly underdressed, and so they're cold for the first 15 minutes of the run until their body heats up. And sometimes the recovery stuff. Have you seen what sometimes they serve at the finish line of the marathon. Yes, the dairy industry is out there, and what they're saying is chocolate milk, that's your recovery thing. Candy bars all up and down. So there are better recovery foods than that. So running alone doesn't make you magic. Running is good. It's good in every way, and including for immunity, but you've got to take care of yourself as well.
I remember when I was a reporter, at one time I was assigned to cover the Marine Corps Marathon. And at the finish line, I was expecting literally just like bowls of fresh fruit, vegetables, salad, wraps, healthy wraps, whatever the case may be. But what they had, in addition to the chocolate milk, as you were just mentioning, was stacks of pizza, just, I mean, mountain high of pizza. And that's what the runners were being served at the finish line. Was not plant-based whatsoever at this time, but I remember kind of thinking like, that is literally the last thing I would think that you would be wanting to eat, or these healthier runners would even want after they finish running 26.2 miles. Didn't seem quite right to me.
You know, everybody's been working day after day, week after week, month after month to get ready for this big race. And when they hit the finish line, there's some people who think, well, I'm glad that's over. Now I can pig out and get fat and really let my body get hurt. What they really need, to tell you the truth, they need a banana. They need to hand it to you with a glass of water. What I mean is your body has been burning glucose. And your glycogen stores in your liver and your muscles are pretty much used up at the end of that marathon. And so you need to restock them, assuming you're going to be physically active in the days to come. And so nature packed the healthy glucose that you need into these really simple snack foods that we call fruit.
What about somebody who's battling cancer right now? We have Jasmine, who's watching on YouTube today, says at 11:53, I need to strengthen my immune system because I have cancer throughout my body. So as somebody's going through that, do the same principles that we've been talking about here apply, or what are some other things that they might want to do to help the immune system out?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that you're dealing with this challenge. I hope everything goes as well as humanly possible. You obviously will want to get good medical advice. Let's start there. And if for whatever reason you're not getting the medical advice that you expect or that you really want, don't hesitate to get a second or even a third medical opinion. Always good advice, and doctors expect it. Don't be shy about that. With regard to food, yes, the principles that we've been describing, generally speaking, are helpful. But when a person is choosing foods to help in their battle for cancer, we've seen slight differences depending on the type of cancer that we're talking about. But there have been a number of studies with breast cancer, for example, where women who have had a diagnosis of breast cancer, if they avoid fatty foods, avoid dairy, if they eat more soy products, they do better. Soy is noticeably helpful with regard to breast cancer, and avoiding the fatty junk seems to be helpful as well. A similar pattern probably applies to prostate cancer. What these have in common is that they're hormone-related cancers, as opposed to, say, leukemia or lymphoma, which is a blood cancer, and where we really don't have much data one way or the other. With regard to the digestive cancers, stomach, pancreatic, colorectal cancer, probably the same thing applies, although the best evidence we have is with colorectal.
Let's turn back to kind of the supplement area. We talked about vitamin C, but Tracy at 1214 is wondering about zinc. Tracy says that they shy away from it because sometimes it can give them a stomach ache. Zinc and immunity, what does the research say?
Where we see probably most of these studies are on those little supplements that a person, they got a sniffle. They woke up this morning, they got a sniffle, and they go over to the local drugstore and they get the ones that are zinc lozenges, and you dissolve one in your mouth and you have them every couple of hours. And they do actually seem to they're not used as a preventive. They shorten the cold you've already got, and they do seem to work for that. And if you want to hedge your bets, you take a zinc, then an hour or two later, you might take a vitamin C, and later on you take a zinc. People do this all different ways, but the idea is that they work by different mechanisms. So you can take some zinc and you can take some vitamin C if you want to do that. And then if your immune system is adequate, you're going to get over the cold no matter what you do.
Nicole at 1213, greetings. Well, hi, Nicole. What are your thoughts about going on a raw food diet to boost immunity and improve your health and jumpstart the old plant-based lifestyle?
I think raw foods are fine, and a good idea, and we should have more raw foods in our diet because, frankly, people kind of neglect them. But I have one caution, which is we're not really too sure which are the best raw foods to have. And what I mean by that is, let's say a person makes a big salad and they put some tomatoes on top of it. Well, tomatoes are a North American food. That's where they started. But human beings aren't North American, aren't North American natives. Human beings started out in Eastern Africa. And the reason I'm saying that is people say, well, the foods that are best for our biology should be those that we kind of evolved with. And there are certain things like potatoes, chocolate, peanuts, tomatoes, and even beans, which are really North American foods that human beings kind of came into as they moved into the Americas, some thousands of years ago. First with obviously people who we now refer to as Native Americans, and then later with European invaders who came in later. But all these foods were in the grand evolution of things relatively new for us. That said, when people have more raw foods in their diet, vegetables, fruits, they do well. Some of them are not digestible raw, like beans. You're going to have a lot of trouble digesting them. You either have to cook them or sprout them. And I would suggest that you not make your diet exclusively raw, because you might find it challenging to get adequate calories that way.
Yeah, a lot of she was wondering as well, like if somebody was to do the exclusively raw diet, how long is that sustainable? How long is that healthy for a person? I think that you kind of just answered that question, but have you seen any research that can pinpoint a specific timeline?
No, and I have to tell you, Chuck, I don't really know the answer to this question, and I've often wondered this very same thing. There just aren't data to answer it. Here's what I'm getting at. We did not evolve with sterno. Animals are all eating raw food, and that's true for chimpanzees and orangutans and gorillas. They're not cooking things, and they're not going to the Roy Rogers carryout. Everything they're eating is raw. So you'd think we would have to be able to do the same, and that's why I come back to what were the foods that were there in Kenya or Ethiopia or wherever it was that human beings kind of began, and what were those foods? And there's sort of no way of telling. But my presumption is that, yes, you should be able to do really well on them. However, nowadays when people go on raw diets and they're picking foods out, they often find that they're not quite hitting the calories that they might need. But different people can try different things and see how it works out. No matter what you do, don't forget that you do need vitamin B12. This is not optional. You got to do it. Yes, it's supplemented to some foods like nutritional yeast, but you're probably not getting them reliably. So do take a supplement of vitamin B12.
Let's look at the immune system from a different perspective and talk autoimmune disorders. Holly is wondering whether diet can actually help with them as well.
Oh, my goodness sakes, yes. And this, I think where this really jumped into public consciousness was with Venus Williams, when she came down with a condition called Sjogren's disease. That's a condition where your mouth is very dry and everything becomes dry and you lose your energy, and her tennis game just tanked. And it's autoimmune, meaning that your own immune system, instead of attacking viruses, it's attacking you. It's attacking your own body tissues. So she thought, all right, let me get away from the foods that might make that worse. Get away from dairy, get away from meat. She started a completely plant-based diet. She improved rapidly. She got her game back. And we've seen this with lots of other conditions. Rheumatoid arthritis, probably the granddaddy of them because it's more common, but also hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. These are, in some cases, autoimmune, and we don't have really good randomized trials of people using a diet for either one of those. But we do have lots of people who have had hypothyroidism, went on a plant-based diet, and improved. Do talk to your doctor. Don't cancel your doctor's appointment. Do follow your doctor's advice, but you're going to eat breakfast no matter what. So getting away from the foods that stimulate the immune system in a harmful way is a good idea. That's dairy, other animal products at the top of the list.
Lots of exam roomies are hanging out with us, raising their health IQs live today. Annette, Lee Evans, Thomas, Roller Girl, Tofu Tuesday, Diane, Mona. Hi to everyone who's hanging out today and asking so many great questions in the comment and in the chat. Appreciate you guys being here. Dr. Barnard, we've talked a lot about immunity, obviously. Spoke a little bit about COVID-19, but I want to ask you a little bit more about this. I saw an interesting study this week where doctors were actually, well, researchers had come to a conclusion that doctors should be talking to their patients more about eating a healthier diet and leading a healthier lifestyle, especially after they've been diagnosed with COVID-19. They're on that road to recovery. And this research showed that there was a really heightened risk of developing diabetes after somebody was diagnosed with COVID. Are you familiar with this study?
Yeah, in fact, there have been a number of studies. There were European studies that showed this, and there was a big study in the US as well. And they looked at different demographic groups, younger people, older people, people with sort of mild COVID and people with more severe COVID. And bottom line is this: you had COVID, you recovered. In the days, weeks, maybe even months that follow, for whatever reason, diabetes is more likely. It's not type 1, it's type 2. And it's not huge. I mean, we're talking about maybe 1% of people or something like that. 1 to 2% of people who have COVID are going to end up with diabetes as a result. But it's something, I mean, you don't want to be there. You don't want to be in that group. And that's much higher than you would have of a control group who didn't have COVID. If you just track them, they're not going to get diabetes anywhere near that frequently. So the question is what's going on? And it does not look like the coronavirus is killing off the pancreas. It's not stopping your body from making insulin. What I think is happening is that it's stopping the cells of your body from responding to insulin. It's aggravating the insulin resistance, probably. And so what do? Well, we learned a whole long time ago that diet is important, first of all, for recovery from coronavirus in general. We suspected that as soon as the virus came in, and all the data have confirmed that the more your diet is plant-based, the less severe of illness you're going to have. But this is exactly the same kind of diet that you want to prevent diabetes. Avoid the animal products, focus on plant foods, keep the oils low. That allows your cells to be insulin sensitive. So whether you can actually prevent that COVID-induced diabetes, nobody's done a research study like that, but we and others have shown that the same kind of diet changes that we've been talking about during this entire program, that they do seem to greatly reduce the risk of developing diabetes in general. And so we want to put it to work.
There's part of me that's impressed with the researchers here, kind of impressing upon those who are looking at this study to say, look, we really should be talking more about diet instead of just, prescribing pills all the time, right? So trying to hit that underlying cause. That hasn't always been the case. I would imagine over the years, especially maybe in the last decade or so, you've seen more and more people turn toward making sure that people are eating properly to improve their health, as opposed to just going the traditional medicine route. Do you think overall we are gravitating more toward that preventative type of medicine versus where we are today, where basically everything is done through a prescription pad?
I think we're seeing progress in the sense that first of all, patients want it. They're not so keen on a doctor saying, here's another prescription and another prescription. That doesn't make you want to jump up and hug your doctor. Patients really want to get information about what can they do in their own lives. How can they make a diet adjustment to help them? That's all clearly true. That said, we've seen huge gaps. Patient goes to the doctor with a high cholesterol. 90% of cases are caused by the food that people are eating. And the doctors tend to reach for the Lipitor prescription really quickly. But by that, I mean they know that statins will drive your cholesterol down, and so they write a prescription for it. The problem with that is, not only is that perhaps an unnecessary medication for many of the people, but it doesn't address the fact that the person's on a diet that's going to, over time, lead also to a higher risk of cancer, probably Alzheimer's, many other conditions that you're not going to be able to attack by just throwing statin at them. So we need a broader approach that includes diet. And I have to tell you, Chuck, I had a lot of personal frustration when COVID came in. We could, right out of the box, you remember this, when you and I were talking as the coronavirus was spreading from China, then into Europe, and we saw this in France, we saw it in the US, that those people who had excess body weight were more likely to get severe COVID, more likely to die. Those people who had diabetes, same story. Those people with hypertension, same story. We were making a plea. Let's get our diet together, get it together now, lose what weight you can, get your diabetes under better control if you can, get your blood pressure down if you can, choose healthy foods. And the medical community in general, for whatever reason, and the governmental community, whether it was federal, state, local, anybody, they did not want to bring that message forward. They were so preoccupied with, and perhaps understandably so, with wash your hands, wear your mask, get your hand sanitizer, and then when you have vaccines, get vaccines. That all makes sense. I understand. But you're going to eat, and you should be choosing the foods that will boost your immune strength, reduce your risk of diabetes and these other things, or if you have them, to get them under as best control as you can. And it wasn't until about 2 years into the pandemic that the research came out and basically just said, I told you so. Foods clearly play a role in your risk of severe COVID. And so it is something that should have been sort of job one at the very beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, I will never forget. We were doing the live shows every single day, and I was keeping such close tabs on the data, especially out of New York, where that was kind of the epicenter for COVID in the U.S. for a while. And the state there and the city of New York even did just such a great job of publishing data about the COVID patients and all of the comorbidities that they had. And we're talking about the same chronic illnesses that we have been talking about now for years. Diabetes, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and we're seeing like such high prevalence of these illnesses among the COVID-19 patients. It goes to exactly, as you said, that no surprise 2 years later that the research bore out, told you so. And a lot of these are the conditions that can be improved, prevented, reversed just by eating that healthy diet.
Yeah, and who wants to say I told you so? I mean, I've had exactly the same thoughts spinning in my head for the past 2 years. You don't want to be right about this in a way. What we were doing here in Washington and elsewhere was we were making pleas with the mayor's office, the health department. They were issuing COVID advisories every day. And we said, don't just tell people to wash their hands. You've got to also give good, simple information about food choices that could get your diabetes under control so that when the coronaviruses come in, you're better protected. And really, for whatever reason, they just couldn't see their way clear to doing that. But much as I don't want to say I told you so, what I do think we should do is draw a lesson from it. It's not just coronaviruses. We've got obesity and diabetes and high risk of diet-related cancers. All of these things are taking new victims now. And the fact that we've been dealing with them for a long, long time, and they're not the new kid on the block anymore, doesn't mean that we don't have to take them seriously. We do. And so what that means is we should treat them like an emergency too. If not for us, for our spouse, for our partner, for our friends, for our children. Let's make sure that people are not just kind of laughing these things off on their way to going to the Golden Arches. We've got to treat these things like emergencies too.
I want to share this comment with you from Skimmer Goo at 1228. They say, hey, Dr. Barnard, I wanted to tell you that I am currently in medical school and you are my inspiration. I've been vegan for a year thanks to your content, and it is the best decision that I have ever made. So that's a big win right there.
Oh, that's nice to hear. And let me say congratulations. Your patients are going to be lucky to have you as their doctor.
No question about it. Keep me informed there, Skimmergoo. Would love to know when you graduate. We'll celebrate you here on the show. I want to switch gears and do a completely different kind of question, but one that we've gotten just week after week after week. Dat here is wondering, how concerned should somebody be about arsenic in their brown rice?
Probably not particularly concerned, but let me give you the longer answer. The rice, like all grains, are grown in the soil, and they pick up whatever elements are in the soil, and sometimes that's good. You know, the iron or calcium that's in the ground will get into plants, and and our body uses that. But arsenic is an element as well, and it's in the ground. And I think some of the blame here goes to the chicken farmers who for decades and decades used arsenicals to deworm the chickens. And so we have pollution with arsenic there too. But anyway, plants can pick it up and rice can. However, the concern that is theoretically present is that arsenic can increase risk of cancer. However, we've done lots and lots of studies, and you don't see any increased cancer risk among rice eaters. If anything, it's quite the opposite, that you see reductions in risk. So it doesn't seem to be a problem. That said, if you want to maybe make some healthy choices, it doesn't matter too much if it's brown or white. The reason I say that is that the brown covering of the brown rice, that's the fiber that in that little brown cap. And the arsenic does seem to concentrate a little bit more there than in the rice grain. So you'd think brown rice might be higher in arsenic. But it tends to be, for some reason, less absorbable. So it kind of just goes through you if it's in the brown rice. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you can choose where you buy it. Different soil has different arsenic content. It looks like the rice that comes from California, the rice that comes from India, the rice that comes from Pakistan, probably the cleanest rice that we see. And then some people will, when they're cooking rice, they'll soak it for a little while, pour off the soaking water, sometimes cook it with extra water, pour off that water, and that will remove some of the unwanted elements there. So you can put those to work. But my big concern is that if a person is fearful of the tiny traces that they're going to get, that they might end up neglecting this otherwise really healthy food. Don't forget that when Japan, back in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, when they had a predominantly rice-based diet, huge amounts of rice, they were the skinniest, longest-lived people on the planet. And when fast food chains came in and their rice production started to plummet and their meat, dairy started to go up, everything got worse. Heart disease, breast cancer rates went way up, diabetes, and many other things. So rice is overall a healthy food, and I don't think that it's a useful idea to diminish it as a result of that particular concern.
Couple more quick hellos here. I want to say hi to Annette, who's tuned in today. Michael Askew said that he made it before the end of the show. Glad that you're here. Australian Aboriginal is here live, maybe for the first time. And if you are, in fact, in Australia right now, that is a big commitment because I believe it is the middle of the night there. And Rutger is checking in from the Netherlands as well. So glad that you guys are all here. And Starchivore wins the Name of the Day award. Starchivore. Oh, man. I love it so much. Okay, plant-based by 30. This one comes to us on Instagram. You can send me your questions there as well at Chuck Carroll WLC. Oh, man, a lot of people are going to love this one. Is it okay to eat bread every day? And if so, what is the healthiest bread that you can eat?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Many people got afraid of bread because of fad diets. The Atkins diet said you're heavy because of bread. And the funny thing was that those books came out at the same time as a book came out saying that French women don't get fat. And what are they eating? Huge amounts of baguettes all day long. Bottom line, starchy foods do not cause weight gain. And bread is fine. If you smear butter all over the top or put bologna in between on your sandwich, then it's not so fine. The fillings are the high fat part. Which are the best ones? You're looking for a vegan bread, of course, the plant-based bread. And if you're busily reading labels in the store and it's driving you crazy to which bread is which, quick tip, the rye bread, always vegan. Pumpernickel bread, always vegan. They don't use dairy, there's not butter and milk solids in them at all. And then apart from that, go for something that's simple, that doesn't have a lot of fat added, and you're going to be fine. Is it safe to eat bread every day? Absolutely.
All right, a couple of more quick ones. We'll start with Phoenix. Do coconut cream and coconut milk have any health benefits?
No, just throw them away. They have been so heavily marketed. And by the way, what they are, if you've never had this, it's not like somebody sticks a hole in a coconut and puts in a straw and you're drinking that watery stuff out of it. Coconut milk, coconut cream, what they are is you take the meat of the coconut, the pulp of the coconut, you puree that. and you can make it fattier or less fatty. The coconut cream is fattier, the coconut milk is slightly less fatty, but still there's a lot of fat in all of them, and the fat is mostly saturated fat, the one linked to Alzheimer's disease and heart disease. I would strongly suggest you consume no coconut fat at all and no palm oil at all. Those are the two plant fats that, unlike all the other plant fats, will raise your cholesterol. They're really high in saturated fat. And yes, they're marketed. Yes, there's all kinds of ridiculous health claims. Yes, they'll put things on the package to draw you in. Yes, they use them in things like Impossible Burger. That's not for you. You don't want that.
Lisette is wondering, how can we find a doctor near us that knows about plant-based nutrition? Lisette, the first thing I would suggest here would be to log on to barnardmedical.org. Telemedicine visits are available for a large part of the country there with our doctors and dietitians that work there. So barnardmedical.org is the web address for that, or you can call 202-527-7500 to schedule an appointment, get that full list of states where services are available. So I would start there. And hopefully we can get you some help, Lisette. Final question today, Dr. Barnard, comes to us from Christina, a special one because she is joining us as well for the very first time here live. And she says, since I went vegan, I have had a lot of bloating and gas. Is there something that I can do about that?
Well, first of all, you made a good decision to go vegan. And if you're having that side effect, it's not caused by a vegan diet in general. It's caused by specific foods. And there are two foods that you should think about. First is the bean group. Beans can cause gasiness. And sometimes people think, if I eat this much steak to replace it, I need this much beans. That's a lot. And so that will cause more gasiness. It's dose related. So have a smaller dose. And secondly, make sure they're really well cooked. There should be no al dente beans. Cook them until they're really, really soft. Start with small amounts, and you'll find that your body kind of adjusts. Like your gut bacteria are saying, okay, I got it. I'll take it from here. And then you can increase from there. The other group that once in a while will cause a problem is the cruciferous vegetables. You went to a party and you had the broccoli, but it was all uncooked on the little appetizer tray with the hummus dip. And for the cruciferous vegetables, if you cook them until they're soft, they're much more digestible.
You know, I love doing these live shows. And coming up August 18th through the 20th at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, we are going to be doing live shows for 3 straight days. I mean, we are tapping into 30 of the greatest speakers in the world of health and nutrition, literally from around the world. That's at the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. Just a few seats still remaining. If you would like to join us in Washington, D.C. for that, you can log on. You see the web address right now on your screen, pcrm.org/ICNM. Dr. Barnard, so glad to be back in person. I know the exam room playing a small part in this, but we are going to see just hundreds of people there really just soaking up all of this great information. And the list of speakers this year is just, it's off the charts good.
We are really, really super thrilled. It's been 2 years of virtual. Now we're back actually in person. We're going to be appropriately socially distanced, and we're going to take all the normal precautions. So what that means is we're reducing the number of people who can actually attend. So if you would like to register, please do. You've got about a month, but we're going to be hitting that magical limit before too long. But yeah, we've got some tremendous speakers. Dean Ornish will be speaking. Rita Redberg from the JAMA Internal Medicine will be kicking us off on Thursday morning. We're really excited that she's going to be with us. Kim Williams is going to be there. We have 3 speakers talking about COVID and various aspects of nutrition, absolute leaders in the field, and many, many other things. Plus, the best food of any food science conference you have ever been to, because we're going to be unveiling universal meals. We're going to be unveiling them Thursday at lunchtime, and it's going to be really, really fun to see all the cool foods that people can eat while they're learning and getting their CME credits and all the other things. Yeah. Plus, we're in downtown DC, so we're a few steps from the White House, a couple steps from the mall. It's a really fun time to be here.
Absolutely. And look, you know, that comment about the food, that is not a throwaway comment. I've been to this conference now. This will be, I think, my 4th time there. And the food outdoes itself every single year. And I have tasted some of what Dustin and his team at the Universal Meals Program has whipped up. And I mean, these recipes are off the charts. They are going to be worth the price of admission alone. So pcrm.org/ICNM, August 18th through the 20th. So many great speakers on stage. We're going to be recording so many episodes of the show, doing a lot of them live as well. You mentioned Dr. Kim Williams. He and I were emailing earlier this week. He's 100% locked in. Can't wait to join us for that. So pcrm.org/ICNM. And we definitely do hope to see you there. And Dr. Barnard, I definitely appreciate you being here today, my friend. This has been fantastic.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Thanks for all that you do to inspire and educate so many people. You're a lifesaver. So it's great to be doing the show again with you, Chuck.
Right back at you. And also a huge thank you to the Gregory J. Ryder Memorial Fund for their continued support of the Exam Room Live and the Physicians Committee, which makes our critical work, including this very episode, possible. You know, the Gregory J. Ryder Memorial Fund supports organizations just like the Physicians Committee that carry on Greg's love for animals by promoting plant-based health and working to end animal abuse while emphasizing programs that promote systemic change and also benefit people. You can visit them online right now at gregoryryderfund.org. That's Gregory Ryder, spelled REITER, fund.org. And while you're there, sign up for their newsletter. And when I'm telling you that they're doing some extraordinary work, believe you me, they are doing that. And that's why you're going to want to get this newsletter so you can keep a rundown of everything that Allison and her team are working on there. So gregoryryderfund.org is the web address to go to sign up for that and see all the wonderful things that they're working on. And for today, my friends, that is all the time that we have. I want to say thank you one more time to the crew behind the scenes for making the magic happen. And of course, to Dr. Neal Barnard for being here and raising our health IQs, and to you exam roomies for helping to make this healthy world go round. Appreciate you guys being here as well. For everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you again soon, but until then, keep it plant-based.